Hello, I'm doing a review of 6.2 for the summative. I'm going to be going over our review pages. There are three of them. I'm going to go through how to do every single question on here. So I'll try to keep the video as short as possible, but I do want to cover everything that you need to know for the summative. One thing is to take a look at this screen here, how to convert a percent to a decimal. To go to a decimal from a percent, we're looking at hundredths. So like 12 hundredths, 12%, you would write it as 12 hundredths. One easier way, or something you might have already noticed, is if you move the decimal to the left two spaces from the percent, it would be 12.0. You move two spaces over to the left, it becomes 0.12. So anytime you want to make your percent into a decimal, even if the percent was, let's say it was 4.75%, to change this to a decimal, you would move that decimal point two spaces. Oh, we got to go another one to add a zero for that placeholder. 4.75% becomes, as a decimal, 0.0475, which is 4 hundredths here. The last part, I guess this would be the 10,000th place, so it's 475 10,000ths officially, but this is the decimal equivalent. We're moving two spaces to the left to go from a decimal to a percent. And one little tip here is, if you're converting to a decimal, it has an L in it, meaning move the decimal to the left. L for left. Percent has an R in it, so if we're going to a percent, we'll move the decimal to the right. So if it's a decimal like 1/100th, we'll move the decimal place two spaces to the right to become 1%. 7/100ths, go two spaces to the right to 7%. If there's more than two digits here, we still only move two spaces. It becomes, if we put the decimal point from in front of the zero, we go one to in front of the seven, two spaces to in front of the one. So now it is 7.15%. It's the same as multiplying by 100. If I took 1/100th and I multiplied it 100 times, I would have 100 100ths, or one whole. If I had 7 100ths and multiplied it by 100, I would have 700 100ths, or 7 wholes. I think the easiest way is to catch on to that pattern that you're dividing by 100 or multiplying by 100. The decimal moves two spaces to either the left or the right. All right, so let's jump into our review. I might bring it up on the screen if this is not going to let me zoom in far enough, but the first question here is to order the decimals from least to greatest, or an ascending order, going from the smallest number to the largest number. Um, and I'm going to try to go through the logic of how I would do this. I would look for the greatest number. That way you know that that one is the greatest, which the only one above 1 in this situation is 1.2. The other ones are less than 1, so they'll be smaller. Let me bring up the worksheet here. Okay, so in this situation, we have the largest number is the only one that's above 1, which is 1.2. The smallest number would be the one closest to 0, would be 37%, basically, if this were percentages, or 375 thousandths, or 37 and a half hundredths, 37.5%. Basically, the one closer to 0. So 0.375 is the smallest. Now we're comparing 0.402, so 402 thousandths, or 42 hundredths. Which one is smaller? 402 thousandths is smaller than 42 hundredths, because if we ignore this 2, 40 hundredths is smaller than 42 hundredths. And it wants it in the original form. So this is the answer in ascending order. All right, let's look at number 2. We have 0.32. We have 2.5 repeating. We have 0 and 321 thousandths, and 2 wholes and 52 hundredths. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier because we have some repeating numbers. So just one quick question is, let me go back to this screen here. I'll actually go to the bottom, start some new notes down here. Okay, so which one is larger here? Because we have this repeating digit. 2 point, so let me make this a little bigger. Okay, 2.52, or 2 and 52 hundredths, or 2.5 repeating, which the repeating means it's 2.5555 forever and ever. Which one is larger? 2.55 is larger than 2.52. 2 and 52 hundredths is not as big as 2 and 55 hundredths. So here, since none of the other ones are larger than 1, we know the largest one is 2.5 repeating. 2.5 repeating is the largest, followed by 2.52 being the second largest. Now we have to compare 0.32 repeating and 0.321. So I would compare them like this. 32, if it's repeating, that means it's the same thing as 3222, or the other number is 0.321. Which one's larger? This one, the thousandths digit, is larger. It's a 2 in the thousandths place rather than a 1. So this would be, actually, if we wrote it in 10 thousandths, 3,222 ten thousandths, or 3,210 ten thousandths. The larger one is the larger one. The one that's bigger is the larger one. The one that has more 10 thousandths is bigger. Okay, so second largest would be 0.32 repeating, followed by 0.321. So there is the answer again from least to greatest. All right, maybe we'll try to pick up the speed a little bit on this. Now we have compare the following rational numbers using greater than, less than, or equal sign. We have 10% and 1/8. Okay, well, you could do this a few ways. There's more than one way to do this. Maybe I'll show you 2 ways you could do this. So 10% and 1/8. If you remember your equivalents, 1/8, well, before going there, let's say you didn't remember your percent equivalents. 1/4 is 25%. An eighth is half of a fourth. So an eighth is half of 25%, or 12.5%. 10% is 10%. So if we're comparing 10% to 12.5%, 10% is going to be smaller. So if we were setting it up in that order, it'd be 10% is less than 12.5% or 1/8. Another way you could get there would be to turn the percent into a fraction and compare them as fractions. Since one of them is a fraction, 1/8, 10% is 10 hundredths. So 10% equals 10 hundredths. 10 hundredths equals 1/10. So which one is greater, 1/10 or 1/8? 1/8 is larger. So this is less than. All right, number 2, we have 0.5 and 3/5. You could compare them as fractions. You could compare them as percents. You could compare them as decimals. I think it's easier to compare things as decimals. In this situation, you'll have to make a judgment call of which one how you want to compare these. But 0.5 is what as a fraction if we were going to compare them as fractions? 0.5, 5/10 is equal to 1/2. Also 50%, they're all the same number. 50%, 1/2, and 0.5 or 5/10. We're comparing that to 3/5. 3 out of 5. We had 2 of the same boxes. Actually, that's a little too big. All right, and we had half of one box colored in, and then you had 3/5 of the other one colored in. The 3/5 goes a little bit further than the 1/2. If it's close though. So 3/5, what is that? If you remember the percent equivalents or the decimal equivalents, 3/5 is 60% because 1/5 is 20%. If you didn't know that, how could you turn it into a decimal? You divide the numerator, top number, by the denominator, bottom number. And when you do a division problem, the number that you're dividing or the top number goes inside the divisor or the fraction bar, and the divisor goes outside. So 3 divided by 5 would look like this, but 5 does not go into 3. So we need to, since we want the decimal equivalent, turn this into a decimal. So it's dividing decimals. We're taking 3.0, dividing it into 5 groups. What would that look like? 5 goes into 30. Bring the decimal point up first. 5 goes into 30 6 times. Okay, 6 times 5 is 30. We have 0 remainder. Our answer is 0.6. So 0.6 or 0.5, which one is greater? I would definitely say 0.6 is greater in this situation. 3/5 is greater, so 0.5 is less than. All right, the next one we have 1.7 and 700%. Here going back to how do you convert a decimal to a percent? You would move to the right since we're changing it to a percent. 1.7 is what percent? 1.70 is what I'll write. Since we're moving to the right, we want to move it 1 space, 2 spaces. That's our new percentage, which is 170%. So 170% is what compared to 170%? It's the same number. It's equal. All right, then let's go down to here. We have a mixed number that is 2 wholes and 3/4 compared to 2.75% of a whole. That one, just thinking, if you know that this is percent of a whole, that to be a whole, it needs to be over 100%. That this is definitely larger. It's over 100%. The other one is not even close to 100%, but that is a little bit tricky. If it were 275%, they would be equivalent, but one is 2%, the other one is 275%. This is equivalent to 2 wholes, 3/4 is 75%, 2 wholes and 75%, or 2% and 0.75%. One is actually 100 times bigger than the other. Okay, then this one says 15% and 1/5. Okay, so what could we do here? A couple ways to go at this question. Let's see, 15% and 1/5. Okay, let's say we're trying to compare two different things. I would like them to be in the same form, the same format, if they were both fractions, if they were both decimals, or if they were both percents, but they are not the same. I could make them anything though. As long as they have similar denominators, they'll be easy to compare. 1/5, let's say I wanted to compare them as fractions. Well, I would change 15% to 15/100ths. And then I would look to try to simplify this in some way, because 15/100ths, or I could leave it like that, actually. I could. I could simplify it also and divide by the greatest common factor, which would be 5. If I divided by the greatest common factor, you get an equivalent fraction, which would be 15 divided by 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times, 5 goes into 120 times. So we have 3/20ths. If I wanted something out of 20, if I wanted an equivalent fraction out of 20, I would make this times 4 to get 20ths, because 5 times 4 is 20, and 4/20ths is more than 3/20ths. So I would go with 1/5 being larger. The other way you could do this is convert the percent to a decimal. So remember 15.0%, move the decimal place 2 to the left. Since we're turning it into a decimal with an L, move to the left. That becomes 0.15 as a decimal. And if I wanted to change 1/5 to a decimal, I could divide 1 by 5. 5 doesn't go into 1, but it does go into 10. How many times? Twice. And the problem is done because there is no remainder left over. So which one is greater? 0.15 or 0.2? 0.2 again is the larger one, comparing them as decimals. Comparing them as percents, if I took this number, 0.2, and I moved to the right 2 spaces, because I'm turning it into a percent, I'm moving to the right, it would be 20%. So which one is greater, 20% or 15%? 20% is greater in that case too. So in this one, 1/5 is greater than 15%, or 15% is less than 1/5. And then we have the last one at the bottom, 50% and 5/100ths. Okay, well, we'll go pick up the speed a little bit. I won't do them in all ways. Let's say I just wanted to compare them as percents. Okay, so 50% is already a percent. And we have 5/100ths. Since we're changing it to a percent with an R, we're moving the decimal to the right 2 spaces, and that gives you the percent. You can ignore the zeros in front of the number, in front of the decimal. It's 5.0% or 50%. Which one's greater? 50%. Okay, 50% is greater than 5/100ths. Okay, moving on. We're going to be putting them in order from least to greatest now. We have a decimal. a mixed number and a percent. What should I convert them to compare them? I like percentages comparing these. Possibly decimals. Decimals and percents are very similar. They're just ones. The decimal is going to be 1/100th of the percent. The percent's going to be 100 times whatever the decimal is. So why not make them percents? Actually, decimals. Okay, we'll go to decimals. That might be easier to understand. So 135%, we're changing it to a decimal. This is the same as saying 135.0%. If we want to make it a decimal with an L, decimal, capital L, we're moving to the left 2 spaces. So let's move this 1 space, 2 spaces. All right, so as a decimal, 135% is 1.35. All right, the other one is already written as a decimal. It's 13.5. And the last one is 8 wholes and 3/5. 8 wholes, 3/5. As of right now, I can already put them in order without even converting this last one. But let's say we did want to convert it to a decimal. I would say it's 8 wholes and 3 out of 5 to change a fraction to a decimal, divide the numerator by the denominator, or create an equivalent fraction. Either way, I've already done the division method, so let's say I use the create an equivalent fraction out of 100 to get the 100ths. 5 times 20 gives you 100, so 3 times 20 gives you 60 100ths. So the decimal is 60 100ths. Putting them in order from least to greatest goes 1.35 is the least, 8.6 is the middle, 13.5 is the largest. So it wants them in the original form, so I'll say 135% is the lowest, followed by the mixed number 8 wholes and 3/5, and then finally 13.5. Okay, now we have new problem. Putting them in order again, still have this time a fraction instead of a mixed number. We have a fraction, a percent, and a decimal. All right, so 1/6. If you don't have that memorized. Okay. 1/6. Let's say I wanted to compare these as decimals. I feel like decimals is a good way to go because I can change 16.7% if I'm changing it to a decimal with an L. I'm moving to the left 2 spaces. And then the other one is already a decimal, so that one we won't have to do anything to. We'll just have to figure out what 1/6 is and figure out what the decimal equivalent of 16.7%. So let's move this 2 spaces to the left with our rainbow color, moving the decimal 1 space and 2 spaces. Now the decimal would be there. Our new number is 0.167. All right, the other number was 0.16. Just keep that in mind. And let's say I added a 0 just to keep them all 3 decimal places. 1/6. 1 goes into the 1 divided by 6. 6 doesn't go into 1. Change it to a decimal. Move the decimal point up. Add your 0 in front. Okay, 6 goes into 10 how many times? 1 time. 1 times 6 is 6. You subtract the product of 1 and 6 from 10, you get 4. 6 doesn't go into 4. We need one more 0. All right, so the 0 comes down. 6 goes into 40 how many times? Without going over, 6 times. 6 times 6 gives you 36. And we have another 4. Bring another 0 down, which we found out from before goes in 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36, gives us another 4. Bring another 0 down. It's going to keep repeating this pattern because 6 times 6 is 36. It'll give us another 4 again, and it will keep doing that. So this is the same as 0.16666. So out of the 3 numbers, to put them in ascending order from least to greatest, I would go six. Let's say we were just looking at the three digits after 166. Okay, so we have 160 thousandths, 166 thousandths, and 167 thousandths. That would be the order going from least to greatest. 160 thousandths being 0.16, the next one being 1/6, the next one being 16.7%. This one is very tricky, very tricky. They're very close together. That's what makes this one pretty hard. All right, now we're going to go from greatest to least. And we have a decimal, a percent, and a fraction. All right, let's compare them as decimals. Why not? We have 0.42 or 42 hundredths. We have 4.2%, which would be the same thing as saying 4.2 divided by 100. Or if we leave it as a percent, let's just convert it to a decimal now. So 4.2%. Remember, it has an R in it, so it's going to the right to change it to a decimal. Or wait, it's a percent now. It has an L in it to change it to a decimal. We're going to go to the left by 2. So we go 1. We need to go another 1, so add a 0 to make sure that you know what that one is. So the percent to a decimal is now 0.042. So 4.2% became 0.042. And 2/5. Okay, we're going to change 2/5 to a decimal. 2/5, well, 2 divided by 5. 5 does not go into 2. Let's change it to a decimal. All right, 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. 0 remainder. Our problem is done. All right, so our three numbers are, here is the percent as a decimal. Here's the decimal as a decimal. And the last one is, here is the fraction 2/5 as a decimal. Which one is the greatest? The greatest one would be 0.42, followed by 0.4, followed by 0.042. This is 42 thousandths. This is 4/10, and we have 42 hundredths. If you're having trouble with comparing decimals, let me know. I can help you out if the place value is getting confusing. All right, so we have, what did I say the largest one was? 42 hundredths. Second largest is 2/5. Third largest is actually a very small number, 4.2%. Greatest to least in order. Okay, now we have 3 1/3, 3.34, and 300%. All right, why not make these decimals again? 3 1/3. If you remember what 1/3 is, it is 0.33333. We have the 3 wholes, which would make this 3.333, which is smaller than 3.34, which is the second number. And then 300% would be, 100% is 1 whole, 300% is 3 wholes. All right, can we put them in order from greatest to least? This is the largest, followed by 3.33 or 3 1/3, and 300% being the smallest. So it goes 1, 2, and 3. Let's write it down. It goes 3.34, followed by 3 1/3, followed by 300%. If I'm going too fast, feel free to pause. I just want to get this done because I'm going on about a half an hour and we're almost done. All right, so if we're going to put these in ascending order, meaning that they're going to be increasing in value, we need to start with the smallest number. What is the smallest number? All of these except for one of them is less than 1. So I already know what the largest number is. It's the only one that's bigger than 1 or equal to 1. It is 1. Um, so why not put these as decimals? All right. We have 45%. What is that as a decimal? Remember, changing it to a decimal moves to the left, so it's 45.0%. We're going to move to the left twice. Now it becomes 0.45, 45 hundredths. Okay. Then we have 1/2 as a decimal is 0.50, 1/2. Or divide 1 by 2. Divide one whole into 2 groups, you'd have 50 hundredths in each group. And then we have 0.6. Just add a 0 just to make it all 2 digits after the decimal point. And then we have the number 1 whole, which is 1.00. Okay, can we put them in order from least to greatest now? They actually are already in order from least to greatest. So how it is in order. Or actually, wait, I'm looking at the wrong number. Yep, it is in ascending order. Okay. This one is not in ascending order. We have 4, we have 0.8, we have 50, and we have 0. I can tell what the smallest number is. It is 0. So 0 is 0. This one, a little bit tricky. We have 50% comes next because that is 0.50. And then 0.8 comes next, 0.80. And then 4 wholes would be 4.0. So this is the order. In ascending order, it goes 0, 50%, 0.8, and 4 wholes. All right, going down. Descending order, meaning from greatest to least. We have 45%, 1/2, and 45 thousandths. Okay, let's make them decimals. Easy enough. 45%, I think we did up here. We said that 45% is 0.45. We know that 1/2 is 0.50. And we know what the other one is as a decimal is 0.045. Okay, how do we put these in order? Well, this is, let's say they were thousandths. Okay, we have 45 thousandths, we have 500 1,000ths, and we have 450 thousandths. So 45 thousandths is the smallest, but we want to start with the largest. So 1/2 or 500 thousandths, followed by 45%, followed by 0.045. Descending order, going down from the greatest to the least. All right, let's move a little bit quicker here. We have 1/2. Is that larger than 1 and 25%? This is the same as 1 1/4. This is 1/2. This is a little bit over 1 1/4. 1/2 is more than 1 1/4. 1/2 is 150%, which is more than, let's say we just made them all percentages. 150% for 1/2, 126%, or 125%. So it would be 1/2, 1.26, 125%, going from greatest to least. We made them all percentages. All right, locate the following rational numbers on the number lines below. I have to make a number line here. So first I'm going to look at the range of the numbers, what numbers are going to be on this number line. If 50 isn't going to be on the number line, I'm not going to put 50 on the number line. I might have it just go from 0 to 1. I might have it go from 0 to 1/2, depending on the smallest and largest numbers. All right, so we have 10%, which I know is 10 hundredths or 1/10. We have 3/10, so we have 1/10, 3/10. I have 5/10. We have 60%, which is 6/10. Okay, so it looks like we have all tenths. I might just start with 0, end with 1. I'll put 5/10 in the middle. So here would be 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, about. Okay, so 3 tenths would go. Here's 1 tenth. Here's 2 tenths. Here's 3 tenths. 1 tenth is this one. 5 tenths goes here, and 6 tenths goes here. All right, going to a little bit trickier one. We have 75%, 25 hundredths, 1/2, and 1 whole. All right, I know that 1 whole is the largest number on here. I know that nothing is smaller than 0 on here, so let's go from 0 to 1. 1 is going to be 1 whole. 1/2, easy enough, in the middle, 1/2, in between 0 and 1. Then we have 25 hundredths, or a quarter, goes right here. This would be a quarter, and 75% is the same thing as 3/4. So 3/4 is here. So our numbers go 75%, 0.25, 1/2, and 1. All right, and we're on to the end. We're wrapping it up. Tell which letter shows the graph of the number, okay? So 2/5. What is 2/5? I'm not sure. Let's look at the numbers. We have decimals, so I want to change this fraction to a decimal. What do you do to change a fraction to a decimal? You divide the numerator by the denominator. All right, when you do that, 2 divided by 5, 2 goes underneath, 5 goes outside. 5 doesn't go into 2, but it does go into 20 4 times. And 0 remainder, we have 0.4. So A. All right, then we have a percentage. How do you change a percent to a decimal? With an L, you move it 2 to the left. Let's move it 1, 2. Our new decimal is 0.452. Where's 0.452 on this? It is right after 0.45, so D would be the answer there. Then we have 0.435, which would come right after 0.43. In between 0.43 and 0.44, we have B. Okay, and then you have 4/9. If you don't remember the equivalent is, with ninths, it's 0.444 repeating. If you did not know that, you could divide the two and say, okay, how many times what's 4 divided by 9? 9 goes into 4 0 times. Let's add the decimal point. 9 goes into 44 times, which would make 36. 9 times 4 is 36. Subtract the 2, you get a 4. Let's bring down another one. 9 goes into 40 4 times. Gives you 36. Do the subtraction, you get 4 again. Let's bring down another 0. 9 goes into 40 4 times. You get 36. This pattern keeps repeating. That's why it's a repeating 4. All right. So the last one, 9/4, repeating 4. Where's the repeating 4? It's after 44 hundredths, which would be C. All right, last question here. Write each of the following number line positions as fractions with the denominator of 100. A denominator of 100 is similar to a percentage as decimals and also as percents. Nice. Okay. This is tough because I don't know exactly what that's pointing to. That makes it very tricky. Not a good question. I can give you a rough estimate, but I can't tell you exactly what that number is unless it's pointing exactly to a line. So like we have percentages here. Yes, this would be 20%. So then if you move 4 spaces over, you'd get to 40%. So this number is somewhere between 20% and 40%. It's not quite 30%. What is it though? 27, 28, maybe? 28% or 0.28 or 28 hundredths. That would be my guess. All right, then since two spaces counts as 10, so that would be 50. Right in the middle, this one's pretty easy, 45%, or 0.45, or 45/100ths. All right, then we have almost to 70, looks like 67, possibly. Let's say it's 66.6. Let's say it's 2/3. That's percent. As a decimal, 0.66 repeating, and 66.6 repeating 100ths. Basically, those are the numbers from what I can tell. Again, not a great question. Last two we'll do pretty quickly. Let's see. Here's 50%. It's in between 50 and 60. How far? It's past 55, not quite 60, 57. Let's go with 57%. It's going to be 0.57, and 57/100ths is the fractional equivalent out of 100. So if this is 70, this is 80. Okay, it's not quite 75. Let's call it 74. That would be 0.74. Again, moving to the left to change it to a decimal. So 74.0, moving to the left two spaces to convert it to a decimal gives you 0.74, which is 74/100ths. If you read it, 74/100ths, 74/100ths. And here, let's say 88. Looks like 88 to me, maybe 89, but 0.88 and 88/100ths. And the last question here. All right, it's not 30%, more than 20%. Let's say it's 22%. All right, that would be 0.22 or 22/100ths as a fraction. Out of 100, it's 22/100ths. Here we have, let's say it's 33.3%. It looks like about a third. That would be 0.33 repeating and 33.3 repeating 100ths. And the last one here, here's 50%, here's 60%. Right in the middle of 50 and 60 is 55. We have 0.55 as a decimal and 55/100ths. All right, so that covers how to do every single question on the review. Try these out. Our summative is on Tuesday. I wish you all the best of luck.